My name is John Driggers, and I'm here today to talk to you about the nuclear renaissance and specifically about the nuclear history portion of it. This is a detailed information that I can, going back as far as the 1700s to discuss this and how we eventually got to where we are right now with our current nuclear power plants and nuclear systems that we use for generating electricity and power for the world today. This has taken a lot of time and energy, so I hope you get a lot out of it. This is also for my nuclear energy and engineering technology capstone class. So hopefully, once you get some information out of this, and it'll continue in conjunction with my other fellow students as well. You'll notice that there is an introduction to this. Another section will be the beginnings, discoveries, everything that is pre-World War II, and then up through World War II. I then later have broken everything up to a Generation 1 time frame, Generation 2 time frame, Generation 3, Generation 4, and then after that, what does it all mean? How does this apply to today's society, and how is that going to be beneficial to everybody? And along with that, we'll also discuss how the operation of these power plants and some of the mishaps have either helped or stagnated different portions of the nuclear energy and nuclear power programs worldwide throughout history. Now, nuclear power in history, it affected us because throughout history people continuously sought means of fuel-powered energy, no matter what you look at. Whether it's been simply fuel for fire all the way through heat, home, hearth, through to today's electrical power. Everybody has sought some means, a way to improve their comfort and their way of life. We've had electricity through the late 1700s to the 1800s and all the way up until today. We've used anything from solar to wind, battery power, coal, furnaces, anything up through to now nuclear power. Nuclear power being one of the big ones that we talk about now in this presentation. So we'll continue on from there, but this is why it's important. We discussed earlier were solar, fossil fuels, coal, oil, petroleum products, hydroelectric, wind energies, types of the green power, and then of course nuclear power. A lot of the green energies are the preferred methods because they're renewable. The earth continuously regenerates itself. It doesn't cause any type of ecological footprint by man, whereas fossil fuels causes damage to the environment, and nuclear energy can as well. Now hopefully nuclear power will get better as far as we go from fission to fusion, but no matter what you do, fossil fuels will eventually burn themselves out and we won't have them anymore. So either we'll have green energies or we'll have some sort of a nuclear fuel. That is our ultimate goal. So that's where we'll be heading toward. Now the fathers of the nuclear world started all back with Martin Klaproth back in 1789 where he discovered uranium. With that discovery, it provided the first seeds of nuclear power, and that led also through with Henry Becquerel with his discovery of beta radiation, alpha particles, Paul Villard back in 1898 and 1900s with gamma rays, and then with the true father of modern nuclear physics with Ernest Rutherford and his discoveries. Those all led through to the invent of nuclear energy and the nuclear power systems. They all led us with the discoveries of various types of nuclear energy as far as elements and what we were learning about them from radioactivity and radionuclides. Later on, we also had Pierre and Marie Curie discovering radium, polonium, discovering the idea behind what radioactivity really was, and their large discoveries gave us a broad understanding of exactly what everything was and where we were going with it, what it could do, both on the medical side and what it did to people, and what it could do on a health side. Now, even though it did eventually cost them their lives and shorten it, we did gain a lot of information from it, and that led to a big, larger understanding worldwide for what nuclear energy, nuclear power was going to eventually become. And it also led the way to probably the next big piece of the puzzle, which came from Albert Einstein in 1905-1906 timeframe developed the theory of relativity. That theory had many different pieces and parts to it. The biggest piece and part that we look at is E equals mc squared. The fact that matter and energy are interchangeable. The fact that matter at some level, and especially in the atomic level, can be converted directly to energy. And when you have that process, such as with radioactivity, that process where the matter is being converted into an energy source can be utilized on a larger scale was huge. And it was further brought about and fostered by further scientists. Biggest one there being Enrico Fermi. He, along with many other scientists, fathered in the rest of the nuclear age towards the beginning of World War II and during it through the Manhattan Project, where they developed the first atomic pile in 1942. Their biggest pieces of this was the fact that they were able to get a self-sustaining chain reaction, where they were able to control it and actually develop essentially the first world's reactor in 1942 in Chicago. Even though that it was during World War II, and the primary goal of this was to eventually develop a weapon that could be used and was used in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, ultimately the scientists were trying to find a way to develop a nuclear power, an energy source that could be used worldwide. Now, in 1946, we had the creation of the Atomic Energy Commission, which set forth all the policies for controlling and managing our nuclear power in the United States. Now, part of that was also overseeing the first civilian plant that was constructed, which was in Shippingport, Pennsylvania. That was primarily to build the first civilian plant, which was constructed, and then it was also put into operation in 1957. Now, that plant, being the first civilian plant that was operating in the United States, was providing electrical power in Pennsylvania for a long time, and it was also pretty much the launching platform for nuclear power in our country at that time. Now, it also provided the split that went over to the military side for Hyman G. Rickover and his Navy nuclear power program. That part of the program developed the pressurized water reactors that they used for putting on U.S. submarines. That was a big game changer for the Navy program because it allowed ships to go out to sea longer and without having to refuel. It changed the world as far as 1954 when the first submarine went out to sea, and it was limited only by the food that it had to carry out. He helped design, build, and implement this program, and it put them on the map, and it put it into a big change into the Cold War as far as how that how nuclear power altered the way that our Navy operated at that time, and it was a huge change worldwide. In the generation timeline, you'll notice that we have the Generation 1, 2, and 3 power plants, as well as going into Generation 4. Generation 1 is primarily what we talked about earlier, which was the prototype, Shippingport, Dresden, Magnox. These were the ones that were the beginning ones. Generation 2 starts with where those prototypes were shifting into more conventional with the PWRs and the BWRs, which was your pressurized water reactors and boiler reactors. Those were the ones where you started to standardize how reactors were built and constructed, and then where they ended up. And then Generation 3 is when you start to see more of the advance. So between the 1960s and up into the 1970s and 80s, you see a standardized form of reactor. Here you'll see a diagram of pressure water and boiler water type reactors. The pressure water tends to be a pressurized vessel where you have a pressurizer and a two-loop system where it is a separate, the water that's in the reactor is separate from everything else, and the steam side is separate unto itself. The boiler water type reactor is a reactor where it's a single loop system. It is controlled within a containment structure that then goes out to contain the boiler water and the turbines. Both of these are excellent designs. They're standard mostly within the military structure and within the Soviet Union with a lot of what they did. And they were expanded upon for various different designs over the years. But they are the basic blueprint for what most reactors. Through the 80s and then into the 90s and 2000s, you had the Generation 2 and then going into Generation 3 style type reactors. Those reactors started with the Magnox gas-cooled reactors, advanced gas-cooled reactors, high-temperature graphites, boiling water reactors, and then going into pressurized water reactors, steam generator, heavy water, fast breeder reactors. Basically everything that you saw earlier with the PWRs and the BWR reactors, they started to expand out. A lot of this had to do with the fact that technologies were improving. A lot of the safety features are improving as far as materials being used, fuel types are being changed out. A lot of things were changing. You would see that even during the 1960s and into the 70s, the molten salt reactors were being developed in Tennessee, and that was something that was also causing a change. Generation 4s later on after the 2000s, and then going into 2010s, the new advances that are being made is the sodium fast reactors, the lead fast reactors, gases, very high temperature reactors, and once again go back into MSRE, the molten salt reactors. Those are high-tech reactors that are being heavily designed and built and constructed today. These are the ones that are designed not like the earlier ones, which were designed to be only maybe 20, 30 years in life cycles. These are designed to last 60, 70 years. They're also smaller, more efficient. The turbines are designed to be more efficient. The materials used are safer, stronger, and designed to last a lot longer. There's a lot more to these reactors than what you typically would have seen back 30, 40, 50 years ago. Now, the energy distribution, earlier in the 50s and the 60s, nuclear power plants obviously were few and far between, so that they weren't the primary bedrock for what our energy power was. Typically coal, petroleum, natural gas, those are things that were the bedrock of what the electrical power distribution system in this country was based on. But over the years it's increased, and through the 60s, 70s, and the 80s it got up to about 20%, and then it kind of leveled off. Part of that had to do with various things that have happened, whether it was SL1, 3 Mile Island, which were some reactor accidents. Chernobyl later happened, Fukushima, which is other incidents throughout the world. Things have happened that have stagnated it, and right now it's about 20%. But hopefully over the future and what we call the nuclear renaissance, it'll get higher and grow. Problems. One of those biggest problems, SL1, that was the death of some Army enlisted personnel that were operating a reactor, and one of them actually was impaled by one of the control rods. They were operating it improperly, and he got ejected from the core. 3 Mile Island and other incidents where they had some radioactive material that ended up getting put into the environment. Fortunately, nobody was injured from that, and there was no long-lasting effects, but it did slow down development of nuclear reactors throughout the United States. Chernobyl was the disaster that happened in Russia that was due to improper operation of a nuclear power plant, and Fukushima happened to do with what happened due to a natural disaster. Even though that technology's improved and we've improved our safety features, it still doesn't change the fact that we have to be careful and learn from our mistakes. Now, over the years, we've done a lot of growing with nuclear power. Things have changed a lot. We've gone from learning about what radiation is and about what radioisotopes are, all the way up until making the first atomic pile in World War II, using it to develop weapons, and now we're using it for safe and peaceful terms for making electrical power. The biggest thing is making sure that people in the world today know that it's safe and that we're able to use it. A lot of people nowadays, when you talk about nuclear energy, don't just think about atomic bombs and people getting blown up. They actually think about power, energy, the good things that can be used for not just fission, but also about fusion and upcoming new technologies that can be utilized. That's it for my presentation today. Hopefully, I've given you some more information on it. There's a lot that goes with nuclear history. There's a lot of detail that goes with it. Over the years, we've tried to strive in our country to try and provide a new, safer form of power. And we've been fortunate that we've been able to maintain our nuclear power in this country and to continue to improve upon it. We've had a few setbacks over the years, whether it be worldwide or self-inflicted, such as 3 Mile Island, but we've been able to overcome it. It takes a little while, but we've been protected by the government in a lot of cases and be cautious, and now that we're in a good position, we should be able to continue on. We will overcome a lot of this, and with the new technologies, hopefully we'll be able to do very well in the future. Thank you.